Hello, hello. It's not Tuesday, is it? Is this a stream day? It just might be. Welcome N7 and others coming on in. Is a software you're developing Minecraft? You know, it's certainly some kind of crafting. It might be Minecraft. Maybe we'll just play Minecraft instead. Today is Tuesday. Good. Well then, thank you for coming to my regularly scheduled weekly stream on Tuesdays. Got a lot to do today, and I was just planning out all the stuff I was going to build, and I was like, you know what? I need to force myself to sit down and just work on this for the next 10,000 hours. So that's what we're going to do. Exciting stuff ahead. We're working on a crafting RPG, and I think I'm going to start tackling combat soon. So there's a few systems we need to put in place before we can start on that, and one of those is character stats, and stats for like the enemies, stats for NPCs if we want, stats in general. From your perspective, the crafting is Minecraft. You make a valid point there. Maybe I need a block shader to go on the game. Turn everything into blocks. Get the true Minecraft vibes. But also, fun fact on note of Minecraft, I'm excited to start streaming Minecraft on Wednesdays soon. Probably next week. See you there. Yeah, let's write some code. The stuff that I'm planning on doing is in a unwieldy window, but we got a lot of stuff to do. Basically, before we do combat, things need stats, so we can do the math on combat. Haven't really figured out how we want the combat to feel yet. If it's going to be like point and click attack stuff, skill shots, probably not turn-based. Lots of different ways we could take it though, but you know, at least starting on these underlying systems for leveling up the character, applying some stat points, supporting more stats, which also maps to what the item system can do, is all the items can roll with modifiers to these stats. We'll add some stats requirements on items later. So, you know, lots of very basic core stuff, but I think it'll be really interesting for enabling other systems. Oh wow, streaming Minecraft on Wednesdays. Will you be playing with anyone? You know what? I just might be playing with somebody. I might be playing with the Cozy Biscuit. I might be playing with 7 of 4. I might be playing with the Ninja. We'll see who shows up. But either way, I'll be playing regardless of if anybody shows up or not. But for anyone who has graced our chat with their presence, I'm shouting out the MVP here. Go check out 7 of 4. They play games. You like games, probably. They also play Minecraft. Not sure I'd classify it separately than games, but they also play a lot of Library of Ruina. I don't really understand the game, but it's fun to watch, and they are a pleasant stream, so check them out. But I went ahead and I've been planning this stat system for a while, so I actually have some little piece at the very, very beginning, which is how we get our stats to work on items currently. So we have an empty component here that just has a couple helper methods for passing in a specific stat and either defaulting it to something, getting the stat value for something, or setting it, multiplying it. I guess we probably need to add as well. But that's all we have so far on stats. And we've got a lot to do, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with the UI, my favorite thing in the whole world. We need a stats panel. We need some UI for showing these core stats, basically your skill sheet stats that players can customize their build into. We will have a way to earn more stat points later. Probably leveling up all your skills will give you stat points. But we're going to add some UI for basically allocating those stats, and also applying these secondary bonuses whenever you do allocate a stat, and we'll give the player some stats at the start, mostly so we can test it out with. But I think the UI is a great place to start. In that same UI, we're going to show effectively what we already have in the equipment window, but we'll probably move it over to stats. That's a good question, because right now when you equip a bunch of items, you see all the aggregate changes to your stats from those items. Is that meaningfully different from seeing all of your stats? Probably not. So we probably don't need, like, once we have our stats window, if we put on some boots, we don't necessarily need to see these totals down here if we open another window and we have all of our totals. So we'll probably do away with this, which kind of opens up this window for a lot more stylization, I think. Maybe we can do something else with this space. Not sure what, but maybe y'all have some recommendations. I also just collected a couple screenshots from some other stats windows that I was kind of looking at before the stream. We got our Path of Exile, which is probably a little bit similar to what I'll shoot for, but probably a larger box up top for your primary attributes, core attributes, and for like assigning those attributes. But I think we'll end up with just like a list of this attribute, this value, this attribute, this value for all the dynamic stuff that items can modify. Can't really stylize that too much when they're all generated on the fly. We also have the Diablo one, which I don't particularly like. It expands out from the inventory window, hidden by default. It's just a long list. It's somehow even uglier than this because you can't see anything without scrolling. And then, like, I was looking at Baldur's Gate and Kenshi. These are pretty basic. I don't think we need to go that basic, but at the other end of the spectrum, we got even more basic on Kenshi. But great game, though. Let's see here. Let's bring this back over here, out of sight. And let's start designing our stats window, I guess. I kind of like, actually, before I start on it, what do we got here? The Diablo 2 stats window, or maybe even like the Diablo 1 stats window. No, that's pretty ugly, actually. But this kind of left-hand side of it is more what I'm shooting for, where we've got these kind of core stats laid out, and then when you can level them up, they get buttons next to them. Super simple to see like what's going to happen. And it's also nice to see that leveling this up modifies these stats, leveling this up modifies these stats, and so on. So if you want more of these, it's pretty simple to know how to get them. Let me look at the Diablo 1 stats window real fast, just because... Oh, that was the Diablo 1 stats window. That explains why it looked so ugly. Diablo 2... Yeah, that looks more... You know what? They're both probably very similar. Not sure Diablo 1 even had a stat. Yeah, it did. But, you know, just some inspiration before we start designing. Do you think you'll have an immersion mode or something where your stats are obfuscated? I've never seen that in games, but I think there will be some stats that are obfuscated, or some stats that you don't necessarily realize you're using those stats. Good example of that is like these social stats down here, which I have nicely marked out, so they're really hard to read, I guess. But if you have high like intimidation or persuasion, something like that, you don't necessarily use that for like completing an action, kind of like how, I mean, your core stats you're going to be using in order to equip items or like thorns, max health, blah blah blah. You see all those have immediate effects in the game, but some of these are more for the LLMs under the hood to use. So if you're like talking to an NPC, it might generate a event in the conversation of like, oh, this player is trying to intimidate the NPC. Let's roll a check against their intimidation stat to determine if that's successful or not, and then that determines how we branch the conversation and generate that new dialogue. I think there was something else, but some of these, yeah, I imagine a lot of them might be obfuscated, but for the most part, I kind of like the idea of like the character build, being able to kind of customize what exactly you're going for and like how you're playing. But I mean, I've never heard of an immersive mode where they hide the stats, but that does make sense. Might be something to explore. What game have you seen that does that? We're just going to copy our skills window, steal it as our base, work from there. Mostly small title indie games I've played in the past, mostly RPGs. That makes sense. I just played, what's it called? Disco Elysium. I feel like that might have had some hidden stats. Maybe not though. It definitely felt like I didn't really have a lot of transparency into how like my conversations were going sometimes. Yeah, it'd be interesting to look into. What do you think is do you think that also applies to some of these other stats? Like, I mean, a good example, critical hit chance, critical hit damage. Like, I almost don't want to put these in the game because they're such a magnet for just like min-maxing required stats, because you can just do the math and see that the math works out to where you need those to do the max damage to something. If they were hidden though, and the mechanic were a little bit more hidden, I feel like people would just do the math anyway. Like if they could look up or even calculate, oh, I have a 20% chance to do this and it does this much more damage. Is it meaningfully different that these are hidden or not? Or is it more for like other kinds of stats, would you say? Like, I kind of picture those being more like social stats, the more RPG elements. It's kind of hard to picture how it would work with some of the combat stats. Although maybe like, I mean, one stat I was considering in like the creative side where you're crafting items, you could have like a creativity stat, which could affect the quality of the items or something like that. And it might be nice to hide that, where it's based on maybe your actions or something versus just straight leveling it up. So if you do more creative things, then the items that you create reflect that. That might be kind of cool. The people that will do the math will always do the math. You can make it harder for them or not. Yeah. I feel like they're going to do the math anyway. I'd probably lean towards just showing all the stats unless it's like overwhelming to the people who aren't going to do the math. I feel like the middle ground is like showing some simple stats where you could do the math, but you don't have to. Good PM. Hey, Lisp Gamer. Thanks for coming in. Did I PM you? I'm sorry. You know, I didn't post anywhere that I was streaming today. I just wanted to get into some code. But yeah, that's kind of, I think, what we'll go with. I think on our stats window, we're gonna try and block out like probably 2/3 of the window for these core stats, and probably the secondary stats that they affect, so you can kind of get a little bit more information. And then we'll have just like that Path of Exile style list of stats beneath on the bottom third. Just meant good afternoon PM. Yes, good afternoon. Hope your day's going well. Have you been up to anything fun today? I vaguely remember you were in some future time zone from me. Is that right? How's your day going? You could potentially have a system where crit chance or damage is modified most dominantly by circumstantial bonuses rather than raw stats. That way, optimizers optimize gameplay rather than stat lines, and casual players could get extra immersion by, oh wow, I feel like I always crit when I hit heads or something. Yeah, that makes sense. We were just talking on Discord the other day about, me and some other people there, about whether we prefer strategy in the like moment-to-moment action gameplay or whether we prefer it beforehand. So like planning for a battle versus strategy during the battle. I definitely lean towards like, I want 99% of my strategy to be before the battle where I can plan everything out. But I think that's a little bit niche. Probably, I think most people want a little bit of both. And I think that's a good call. I really like that circumstantial stuff, basically making the math too hard to do in the time allotted in the moment to do the math. So that'd probably be a good idea. Then you're basically playing around like heuristics and doing your best versus just trying to min-max the numbers. That's a good idea right there. There's actually a really cool system in Chrono Cross Elements, I think is what they called them. Will they show the pie? Chrono Cross field effect? Yeah. Show me. Yeah, you can kind of see it in this picture. So in this game, you have spells, and each spell has an element, a color associated with it, and they all have their own like base damage or effect modifier. However, every time you use a spell, it pushes that spell into the field. So in this scene, they used a red spell, and then they used a yellow spell, and then they used another red spell. So it like colors the field this way, and it basically modifies spells of the same and opposite colors. So right here you have, they're not evenly split, like this is the smallest amount, this is the medium, and this is the most effect, which happened 3 turns ago. But basically the field is mostly red, so red spells are going to be more powerful, and the opposite, so blue spells are going to be way less powerful. I think that's a really cool way to like have the state of the battle do some of that like circumstantial bonuses or negatives. And you can kind of plan for that, like you want to take a lot of red spells if your character is weak to blue spells or something like that, so your spells are inherently weakening the enemies. But, I mean, you can't really do the math there of, you know, what is the optimal spell to use here, because it changes turn by turn. Like using a spell to push an enemy into water to make them wet so you can do more damage with electricity. Yeah, that would be really cool. That's probably a pretty complicated system to build in, but yeah, that's a great thing of complexity. I really like systems-based games where you're kind of layering in all those systems and figuring out stuff on the fly effectively. Also, Lisp, I don't know if I saw your message. You're in Montreal. It's 4:20. Happy afternoon. Thanks for being here. But yeah, that's I like that idea 7. I think I'll figure out that. Luckily, we're just focusing on like the stat totals today, so I don't need to figure out all the combat quite yet. But that's definitely what I'm thinking about, is how we want to make it fun. I'd love to avoid just min-maxing numbers, and there's a lot of stylistic and vibe things to try and work through of how we want combat to feel. But before we can get all that, we need like stats, we need creatures, we need some spells, probably some weapons, like all these different things will come together hopefully later. But I do love the games that kind of layer in systems on systems on systems and then have them interact with each other. So, I mean, we're kind of doing that here, but yeah, having enemies be wet so they're more affected by like lightning damage or less affected by fire damage, something like that would be really cool. Also made me realize that I've never seen a game with that type of system have bleed, cause have bleed cause increased poison effects. Are you more likely to get poisoned, or for poison to be worse when you're bleeding? I don't know if that's the case. But I have seen some games where they kind of get stacked together in the style of like, if there are stats for increased damage over time or something. I've seen people go like bleed and poison in Path of Exile or Diablo or something where the same stat is modifying both, but yeah. Stats. It's harder to resist a poison if it's already in your blood. So yeah, I guess if you're bleeding, the poison could touch the blood. Does it get back in your body though? Maybe so. But yeah, I guess there's probably some fun stuff there. I'm playing Yakuza Like a Dragon right now. Where to farm 50 to 60. Right. There's some really cool status effects in this game where like you can give enemies a cold and they'll catch it from each other, or like you can embarrass enemies and they do some different stuff. Like it's some really unique status effects, I'd say. And I guess they do have bleeding and you kind of just bleed out, but I'm trying to think if it interacts with anything else. Don't think so. But there's some cool status effects in this game too. I'm also gonna put on some Spotify in the background. Just gonna vibe today. I got Dimitri in my lap. I'm sure Lucy's sleeping around here somewhere. What do we got today? And where is my... Ah, yes. Need to set it up in Spotify real fast. Cool. I normally do like video game music or something, but you know what? Might do some chill bops today. Let me know if the music's too loud, too quiet, or what. I've got it like 3 different volume levels all modifying it, so hope it comes through fine on stream. Did you know bats are nocturnal because if they were diurnal, they wouldn't be nocturnal? I actually did know that. I think I read that on somebody else's stream in the past couple days. It's a good fact. Good fact to know. I'll make sure that I pass it along to somebody else's stream now too. Alrighty, so what do we got here? We've got a bunch of stuff. So we are probably gonna roll with something probably about that size for core stats that you can add attributes to. Pull that down a little bit. Give the UI some room to breathe. This frame's a little overpowering compared to the outside frame. And I guess we probably want to use a different background on our window too, so we're not reusing them. What else we got? What all core stats have I decided on so far? I just threw these together so I could get things working, but I'm more than happy to change these. I'm going with 5 here, and we kind of have effectively 2 that are, well, I'm trying to set them up so they can mostly either be used combat or for crafting. I feel like for this game there will be a lot of people who completely don't do combat at all, and there will probably be a lot of people who do very little, like harvesting and crafting, when they could just be doing combat. So like max health obviously pretty much only related to combat, harvest speed pretty much only related to crafting. But like mana is a good example of, you use mana for spells in combat, but you use it also for like the alchemy stuff that you do. So if somebody wanted like a nice mix of both, it's a good stat. I don't know if I'll actually keep, well, first of all, these harvest stats on these, but I will probably end up doing 2 like secondary effects on each of the core stats. 1 for combat and 1 for crafting is what I'll probably go with. Like obviously dexterity could be like attack speed or accuracy or evasion, armor, blah blah blah. So if you only care about combat, you don't want it to be a dead skill. So probably a little bit of both on each, but these are the core stats I'm starting with. Maybe you can tell me if any of these have some negative D&D connotations or something where they don't necessarily apply here. But, you know, just figured I'd start with some, and then should hopefully have a system where I can just swap things out later with something. And I think when we get our models set up to have like strength as a core stat has these effects and these like secondary things that it modifies, that'll all be encapsulated in a model that we should be able to generate new models for later. So if, for example, we wanted another stat of like luck or something, we could probably do some cool generation down the road that the player could say like, I want luck as a stat, and it kind of allocates okay, each point in luck does this, this, and this. It has these effects, and now you could level up luck as a core stat as well. But that's a little further off. Mostly I'm just building a system that lets you pop in and out core stats whenever you want. Like mana being an energy pool for both alchemy and for spells. Endurance could determine hit points and work like mana for crafting. Yeah. I'm kind of almost leaning towards like a Stardew Valley system for stamina. Don't really know yet if we'll keep it, because I feel like stamina in most games is rough. You'd like not being able to run when you want to run because you don't have enough stamina and you need to wait and let it recharge is bad. However, there are some good uses for stamina where, like, in a horror game, it's probably good because you need to manage your resources. It adds more tension of like, ooh, it's a little scary here. I would love to run, but I need to keep that in case something really scary pops out and then I can run. But I feel like I'm planning on having a day-night system here, and stamina is a natural way to kind of corral players back to a single location in the world at the end of each day. They got to go home. So it becomes more of a like, what all can I do throughout the day? It kind of makes the choices matter a little bit more because you can only do so much each day without having like a negative downside of like, you can't do this or you need to wait for this. And it also does some interesting itemization choices of like, if you are a player who wants to do a lot of wood cutting and mining and stuff throughout the day, you're probably going to look for items that give you a lot more stamina so that you can do a lot more of that. Or maybe if you want to keep playing through the night, you'll probably want more stamina so you can like last through the night without having to sleep to regain that stamina. It's kind of like just like a resource pool of how long can the player go doing things before they need to reset back from a like new even position each day. Stamina only really makes sense in a context where time matters. Yeah, I would say that, or like when you have a small amount of stamina and you need to reserve it for something, but there's also like some tension there. Kind of like the horror game. In Stardew, it's a resource to manage and a thing to work towards. In a game with combat, it determines how much you do in a fight. Yeah. Yeah, so I could see like, I mean, obviously, stamina is really easy to envision on like the Stardew side. Crafting and wood cutting all use stamina. I was also picturing like, right now there's two systems in the game for crafting. One is alchemy, which is magic based, and one is blacksmithing, which is based on the smithing skill. Smithing skill probably uses stamina to make items. Alchemy probably uses mana to make items. So there's also that interesting, like, how do you want to specialize your character to make items? There's different ways to make stuff with each system, but they use different resources. So might be fun. But I could also see in like combat, maybe stamina, you can expend some stamina for like extra effects or something on your attacks. And if you don't have stamina, you can still do the attacks, but they like don't get all the energy you would put behind them or something. Yeah, like maybe if you run out of stamina, you can still do stuff just at a lower effectiveness. Yeah. I'd probably frame it as like bonuses rather than a penalty without the stamina because, you know, that just feels a little bit better. But yeah, effectively that, I'd say. Yeah, good call. I do not know how we want to actually like stylize this window yet, but we are going to make it work. That's what we're going to do. Kind of like stamina type resources letting you do extra stuff. So reframing like that is definitely nice. Yeah, there was actually, I don't know if you ever played World of Warcraft. I've never played World of Warcraft, but there's a famous like framing thing that they did with something related to like sleep or downtime. Effectively, they released this system that said after 8 hours of gameplay or whatever it was, you get 25% less XP. And all the players were like, what the heck are you doing? I hate this so much. However, they then just reframed it to where they said, like, when you're offline, up to 8 hours, you gain up to 25% like stored XP that you then get as a bonus whenever you're playing. And then obviously that runs out, so then you're back to normal XP. Like all this interesting framing. And people loved that. So they hated the first thing, and then they just changed the names and people loved it. So yeah, Final Fantasy XIV has the same thing. I haven't played that. My brother plays that a lot, but yeah, that checks out. I think it's pretty common. Hey, Human, welcome in. I know it's probably like 5 in the morning for you. Thanks for popping in. How's your day going? It's a surprise stream today just because I want to code on stuff, chat about stuff. We're knocking out some like preliminary systems before we can get started thinking about combat. But there's a lot of interesting decisions to be made before that. So today we're working on character stats and like leveling up your stats to kind of character progression, a character build that you can specialize into, basically giving the player a little bit more agency into how they want to play, and a lot of other stuff that we'll be able to do when this system's done. I think a lot of other systems will lean on top of it, but everything needs stats for now, effectively. Only 10:30. Well, that's good. Sounds like you'll be around for the next 6 hours, so thanks for being here. We're building our stats window right now, just trying to get something that will look good enough. Still in the middle of something, so I'm lurking mainly for a bit. No worries at all. Maybe a strength stat determines how quickly you can make progress on crafting an item, while using dex and stamina lets you do extra stuff to increase the quality. Might add some value to those in crafting. Yeah, I'm trying to walk like a fine line of... I mean, we have tons and tons of stats that can go on items. So I want like most of the like long tail specialization to be from items. So like movement speed probably shouldn't be on a main stat, because it's one of those things where people either need a ton or they don't take it at all. And things like your harvest speed I have on the main stat, but I'm also kind of wondering if it should be there or if it should have like a reasonable baseline and you just have items that you could add to it instead of needing to like specialize into a faster harvest speed. But I mean, we're going to build it with that, so we'll see how it feels. Can items be swapped around freely? Yes, you can change items anytime. There's nothing in the game right now, or that I can think of, that would kind of lock in your items. Although we were also talking on Discord the other day about like how do you balance combat around generated items that you have no idea what the power level can get to. We were all kind of leaning towards like infinite scaling dungeons where you're just trying to progress further and further and further. You're getting new items from those dungeons to craft new items, and you're crafting stronger and stronger items. So there's like 2 different ways you can progress through the dungeons. One is like getting better at the combat in the dungeons and stuff, but one is also having better items. But we were thinking that being able to plan for those dungeons, I like that strategy before the action. That might be a good example of like if there were some special dungeons, like a ice cavern with a boss that does fire, or the triangle. We don't really have an element triangle, but if there was like an ice dungeon where the boss did damage that was like water damage. So you're bringing in fire stuff to get through the ice dungeon, but you can't change your gear at the boss because for whatever reason. You would need to kind of itemize a little bit better of like, do I want to go all in on getting through the dungeon? Do I want to itemize for the boss? Etc. etc. That might be a good way to kind of lock in items. But for the most part, yeah, I think they're free to exchange whenever. It might end up encouraging the player to just carry a set for everything. Yes, and I would very, very much like to avoid that. One set for each type of action. Yeah, I really, really don't want people to carry around like a combat set of gear and a crafting set of gear and a harvesting set of gear, because I feel like that becomes a chore to just like change all that gear before you do each action. So yeah, I don't really know the fix of that. One like band-aid solution is I guess like gear swaps, like saving different sets of gear and just being able to switch between them. That fixes the chore of like right-clicking all your items to equip each of them. But I still don't know if I like that, because it feels like I would love a game where people can just go out and explore and they're kind of reacting to whatever they're hit with, and they've geared up a little bit, but it's more like decisions in the moment at that point. So yeah, there's a lot to think about there, I think. But let's see where we're at. Human tries to catch up wherever he can. Thank you. Me too. Will the game be grind focused or endgame focused? To be determined. The game as it stands right now, I actually don't know where I would classify it within those two categories. The loop right now is you go out, you collect some items, or actually, from seeing people play it, the loop right now is you talk to some NPCs, you learn about a problem that they're having, you come up with an idea in your head of like what you think would solve that problem, and then you go out into the world looking for those specific things. You collect them, you bring them back to the NPC, you give them to the NPC, hopefully solve their problem, and then you go get a new problem from another NPC. So there's a little bit of like collecting, there's some like, it's not necessarily grinding, but there could be grinding of like, ooh, I really want to harvest from this object, but I need a little bit higher woodcutting level to harvest from it. But the nature of the crafting system is like you can kind of get around a lot of those restrictions anyway. So you can either grind or like be clever about how you're crafting stuff. So yeah, I guess there you got grinding problems. But I mean, right now there's no combat at all. I feel like I don't know yet what the end game should feel like, because I love grinding. I would love just grinding and grinding and grinding. And there's infinite items to craft, so like I'll probably do like a museum style, like from Animal Crossing. If you want to bring one of every item that you craft to some guy, he can set up a museum and he can have his own researchers like generating lore about every item behind the scenes, and you can come back and read more about it, and like you're effectively collecting everything at that point, which I would say is still grind focused. I feel like in-game is more like that infinite dungeon delve, and I feel like that gets more compelling in multiplayer games where you're competing with other people to see who can go further, or like just basic leaderboards, which we could add in. We don't necessarily even need to make it multiplayer. We can just say like there's public leaderboards if everything's scaled about the same. Everyone has their own items. Maybe you can see the items that other people have. I know in the last stream somebody mentioned like a trading post where you didn't even need to make the game multiplayer, but you could list items on the trading post and see like items that other people have made. I kind of like that aspect of trading, and like the crafting system I think is so cool because you can make these really, really specialized, like perfect for you items, but you could also make perfect for you items for someone else. And that isn't as exciting if it's strictly single player, but you know. If you want an infinite dungeon delve for competitive depths, having a concrete "this is max level" might be nice for making it an even competition. I agree with you. However, I think it's easy to make a "this is max level" cap, but it's a lot harder, and I'm also not sure that I want to make a like cap on item stats, if that makes sense. Like if you figure out how to make a plus 1000 strength sword and everybody else's swords are like plus 5, plus 20, like I feel like it would be cool to see that just absolutely obliterate everything that you were fighting, but then have that like depth of, oh, okay, now I can jump down to level 300 in the mines and things are back to being hard again, and I need to figure out what the next like improvement to my gear is. So it is really, really hard to, I would say, balance this stuff in a competitive sense, just because it's a fine line between like giving players the freedom to create whatever they want and giving the players the freedom to cheese things and make absolutely broken things, which is kind of where the infinite scaling dungeon comes in, of like always having more challenge no matter what your power level is. But I would like some like foundation or like baseline bosses in the game that are really, really, really difficult, and maybe like what you would imagine being max level to be, that's the power level that you would be to beat this boss or this boss. And so maybe there's some leaderboards to be done on like who can beat that boss with those power levels or something like that, where it is a little bit more even playing field. But even then, it's mostly just like I want to have some really, really difficult bosses that you need to take advantage to the full extent of the crafting system to make like ridiculous things to beat the bosses in interesting ways, because they're so hard otherwise. So we'll see. I am not feeling this playlist. I'm gonna find something else. Also, I appreciate all the tips. I know you are a huge gamer, especially in this like more role-playing aspect, and I think we both play a lot, but we definitely play different games, so it's interesting to hear the feedback there. Alright, we'll go back to you know what, let's try some Octopath Traveler. Maybe a locked item / character stats are locked to this dungeons, and infinite uncapped dungeons could both be included, giving both options. Yeah, that's a great example. That's like in Slay the Spire, you have your daily dungeon that is the same for everyone. And so I could see also providing like, okay, here are the items that you use, which could also be fun to make. Like, if we want to make a ice dungeon or like a fire dungeon and then give the player nothing but a bunch of like ice armor that's gonna melt, like how are you gonna get through that? That'd be cool to see. I think we can make some cool challenges that way, and then there would be even playing field on everything. But yeah, I think that'd have to be beside the infinite progression. And also, let's see, I just realized I never updated my this week's task on OBS. Let me do that real fast. Skills and stats accessories. All right, let's make our prefab for just a single core stat. So we're gonna need an icon, probably. I guess we don't really need one, but why not when you can just generate these icons on the fly? We'll say icon for the stat, anchor them over yonder, we'll do some text. And I guess we can just superimpose the like plus icon over this icon. Let's do a something. I'm sure that's a great stat image. So that would also need a frame. Could do circular icons. Nah. Something like that's fine. And I think we even have a plus button. Let's see if we can... Could use these for up and down. I don't necessarily want to allow people to undo the stats they allocate. I feel like that's a big... people might not like that. But since there's so much randomness in the game, I don't want people to have to, like, if they get a really, really cool item, they've been specializing in strength this whole time, but they get a really, really cool item that needs some intelligence. I don't want them to feel like, oh, okay, well now I have to decide, do I want to get rid of all my strength and just max out intelligence, like click this a bunch of times and redo all my stats just to use this item? I would much rather have the loop be, I found this really cool item, I'm going to stick it in my stash, like a shared stash across characters, and then I'm going to create a new character that specializes in XYZ. And so then they have two characters that are both finding items. And I feel like if you give the player the ability to like reset their character build effectively, it's a lot, there's more draw away from this like character fantasy that they've been creating, and it's easier to like lose that permanence to that character if they just become something different every time you find a new item. So obviously there's ways to mitigate that, like having undoing stats like cost some amount of currency so you can limit it, but I feel like for the most part maybe we can get away with just allowing stat allocations at the start and not letting people undo it. But if people complain, maybe we'll undo that. I also like how the infinite dungeons would probably lead to a situation where people get super specialized. I can see a world where top players are almost like Ruina colors or superheroes. That's the scythe guy. He got to floor 2000 using only his special scythe. Exactly. Yeah, that would be so cool because, like, I would be the guy who is most excited by, like, crafting that perfect scythe. More so than even, like, getting to floor 2000 with it. Like, I'm crafting this perfect scythe and I'm like, this is going to be so cool. That's the Lightning Mage player. She figured out a perfect spell list that can clear any dungeon with only lightning and support spells. Yeah, exactly. I think there's a balance between, like, this strategy outside of battle, which I think is crafting effectively, and the strategy in battle. And I think it's really, really cool to be able to specialize in either. So, like, you could also have, ooh, that's the top player. Like, he's just really, really good at avoiding every bit of damage on screen. So he is able to get all these items that don't give him any survivability at all. He just has damage, and he pushes in so deep because he can mechanically avoid damage and, like, do really well that way. But you could also have somebody who's, like, really, really good at the crafting side, who's like, all right, I know exactly how to make these amazing items. I'm going to make this perfect scythe and I'm going to get through, and that's what I need. Like, it's an interesting way to have two different ways to progress through the same system, I'd say. But yes, I love that. Alright, let's bring in one of these guys. Let's see if we can get him looking good. Oh, he's so tiny. So we're gonna need -90 scaled up quite a bit. Kind of looks like a hat. And also, oh shit, that's Jerry. He made a better version of the special scythe for Scythe Guy. Is cool. Yeah. I think it'd be so cool if you could have, like, any game, especially multiplayer games, you're always going to have people that are kind of celebrities. And they're usually celebrities for, like, playing the game really well and, like, doing that sort of thing, or no-lifing it and just being the highest level or something. But you don't often see celebrities that are like, ooh, that guy made a really cool sword, or that guy always makes really, really cool swords. That's a David sword right there. So I think that's a cool, like, side component of this kind of unbounded crafting system. That's so janky. You know what? Something else we need is your current level in this stat. So we'll say like 18, just so we can have a 2-digit testing bit. Center, square. 90. Let's look at that over here, and then we could do something like let's probably center this too. We could put our arrow closer to that. Hear about the bomb guy? He made a new record by using one of Jerry's shields. He found a way to make a shield that can parry bomb explosions to double damage and statuses. Yeah, like, there's so much cool stuff. Like, I'm so excited for this crafting system because there's so much that you can do with it. But we got to actually code in all the stuff to actually do stuff with it. So I think for the next month or so, I'm going to be focused heads down on combat and like providing that sort of end game of what can you do with your items. Andrew's going to be focused on the NPCs and quests and some other stuff there, providing that sort of end game of like what can you do with your items if you prefer managing the town or like convincing NPCs to do different things. Lots of stuff to be done there too. Filling requests and building an empire, starting a business, all that jazz. More of the role-playing side, I'd say. And so I think having the two different kind of in-game branches will work out really well because they'll also play on each other, where being good at either will give you better items to try out the other one and make the other one a little bit easier because you'll have these good items and you'll be getting items back from either that help you with the other one too. So I think it'll be really, really cool. Crafting system is already so cool. Like I was just talking to somebody earlier about how it just works. Like it's its own system, completely separate from effectively like the game itself. I could drop this system in any other game and it would just work. All you have to do is add some metadata to some objects and then the crafting works. You can harvest stuff, you can create stuff. I had some like test objects in the world that were just named test object and it didn't have any metadata about it. So I was harvesting from that while testing stuff and I was getting like mysterious artifacts and like encrypted discs and other like items that made sense from that but aren't coded into the game at all. So I could easily see like if we make a scene with a spaceship, you could just drop that in. You have all these objects in the spaceship. The player can harvest stuff from those objects. They can create new items from those harvested things. So it's all sci-fi themed. Literally no code changes necessary other than just adding that metadata to objects, which is crazy. But I've also toyed around with like, you could also put this in a survival game where you're creating food and like tools and stuff in the wilderness. You just add a hunger bar and you're probably good. Or like a cooking game or, you know, lots of other stuff. So I'm really excited to do a lot of stuff with this. If the combat system is simple enough, maybe you can arm villagers and let them go off on their own adventures. Simulated dungeon runs. Yeah, that sounds super cool. We actually have, let me pull that up. There's some plans that we're working on right now for NPCs. And one of those is giving them actions that they can perform. Because this new NPC brain we're working on effectively has an internal monologue for each NPC that runs, and whenever they aren't doing something, it is basically a query into this AI engine that says like, here's all the stuff I know, here's all the stuff I know about me, all the stuff I know about the world, what should I be doing right now? And we ask this AI like, what should they be doing? And the answers that the AI can give is like these actions that we've defined. So they're very generic actions like go to a place, interact with a thing, talk to someone, craft items, eventually like attack stuff. But the trigger for doing these is behind the same sort of like AI system that we use for crafting. So if you as a player go talk to an NPC in town and say like, hey, there's a goblin outside town that I can't kill. First of all, here's a cool sword that I crafted. Can you go kill him? When this NPC is next doing their internal monologue loop of like, what should I be doing? They could very well say like, oh, okay, well, I have this memory of the player saying that there was something outside of town that they couldn't kill. My friendship score with them is this high, so maybe I should prioritize that higher. I got this new sword in my inventory, which I can see. I'm going to go outside of town. I'm going to wander around aimlessly until I find this creature, and then I'm going to attack that creature and see if I can survive it. That's a very generic way to implement, like letting villagers go off on their own adventures, and like they could kill the creature, and then maybe one of these actions could be like loot something on the ground or collect X, Y, and Z and go back to town. They'll probably end up killing the creature, and then they'll have no active action, so they'll be like, what should I do? They'll have the memory of attacking the creature, killing the creature. They'll see the stuff on the ground. They'll probably say like, I should pick up this loot. Let's add this real fast. Does seem like a good action to allow. And then after they've looted those items, they'll go back to that loop and say like, all right, here's the things I've been doing recently. I killed something, I looted something. What should I do now? Maybe my health is low, or my energy is low, or whatever. All these stats we're building today, which I'll definitely get back to. And they'll be like, all right, what should I do now? Maybe I should go home. And they'll go home. The player can talk to them tomorrow, and they'll see the loot in their inventory. They could buy it from that NPC with the systems we already have. I think that's super cool. But yeah, we could also do something more defined, like more of a system itself of like, okay, here's a dungeon outside of town. Which NPCs do you want to assign to go do it? And we could build a system on top of that. But I love the idea of just like supporting these actions that NPCs can decide, and then specifically because they're taking into account their like memories and recent interactions, the player can tell them about things, and then they might decide to go do those things, or the player can convince them to do things. Can the NPCs learn to sell the loot to other NPCs? Oh, you know what? I don't have that in here. Yes, I actually wrote up this whole thing first last night, and my browser crashed and I lost it all. So we're gonna add in buy sell items to a nearby NPC. And I'm trying to keep our scope down real low before we get our demo out. We are actually targeting, when is the next Steam Next Fest? Which I don't think I can actually show on screen, but October. That's when we want to have our demo out, or before then at least, but that's like our deadline to have the demo out. So hopefully real soon, and so I'm trying to keep the scope down. Time to encourage your townies to build an economy. Heck yeah. I think it'd also be so cool, like you have this town of effectively living NPCs that can decide what they want to do, and maybe we can add in like happiness or whatever other stats we want to add on the NPCs. But it'd be so fun to like treat the game as a town building game or something where you are managing like what some of the NPCs are doing. Maybe you're building new buildings. I know Andrew wants to put in a building system real bad, which we'll probably do. So you could build some new buildings, get some new NPCs moved in, maybe some old NPCs move out. You're like customizing who all's in the town, specializing for like those economy people, putting them all to work and like making money back somehow. Look, I've made addictive dust. I'm going to convince the NPCs that it's very valuable. First one's free, you know? But yeah, I mean, if we added addiction as a stat, either directly or like, I guess you could add something that's like, well, I guess you could layer in some systems together. We have like worldwide events planned where everything in the world will have a certain stat applied to them. So you could do like a negative health region in a worldwide event where everyone is slowly losing health, and then you have an item that's like, you can't lose health for the next 8 hours or something like that. You could probably sell that pretty easily. Or maybe you regain health for however long, and you know, probably make a lot of money. You want to go out and harvest as much of that as you can, craft it back into the sellable component, and take advantage of that world event before it ends. If they remember actions and weigh them as being important or not, certain items that can increase their own value is addiction. Yeah, exactly. We haven't built the, oh, what's it called? Like, I mean, it's called a scoring system in AI, but like effectively the weight of, there's two components. Like one is fetching all of the memories and sensory input and all that, and then you rate that and filter out everything below a certain threshold. So then you have your like context of what's relevant in the world, and then you take that and you give it a list of actions that you can do. Within that step there is where you also have another scoring step of like how much you prefer each action. And I think it'd be super cool to have different preferences effectively for each NPC. So like some might be addicted to fishing, or like collecting items is more generic. So they're gonna prefer going out and like harvesting items, collecting items, fishing. But some might prefer like crafting items. So that'll be like cooking or just combining items, blacksmithing, all that jazz. So they have like these persistent personalities that kind of get factored into the decision making, which is so cool to think about. Actually, NPCs could potentially get addicted to healing items depending on the values. That's true. It all really comes down to the values on the items and what the NPCs value themselves. Let's put a little bit of a background on this guy. I'm in and out of the code, but we'll get there. We want a frame on this guy, and I think we want the inscription. Yeah, that'd probably look good if we can get it scaled correctly. So we could do something kind of like this. That might be a little too funky. But let's get rid of this guy for now. Let's put a background on it as well. We can just do like a gray. And current level. Why are you beneath it? You're rendered after it. Why are you beneath it? Oh wait, where's our stat level? Oh, current level. Gotcha. So alrighty, man, I'm back. Almost. Welcome back. We've just been chatting away about the cool NPC system, some crafting stuff, kind of our plans. Seven's giving me some good advice on making combat fun, making crafting fun. I think it's super fun to think about, and I just want to think about it all day. I'm trying to balance actually coding every once in a while at least. So background, frame, and level. I'll go in the level container. This actually need to just like reset these positions, I guess. Okay, cool. That worked. So I want to put this underneath the icon. And let's adjust this frame so it's less absurd. Is that good? It definitely connects the skill icon with the level. I feel like this frame is still a little wonky though. But it will allow us to do something like... Where did our... What's this button called? Ah, it was hidden. So we can put this guy a little smaller. When the player has stat points to spend, we can start showing this, and it kind of implies that eventually you could take stats down. Still don't know that I want to allow it. Let's see, that'll be 90, I guess. But there is the implication there at least. Might be a little too busy though. WTF. Being able to drop stats exclusively at low levels is nice for letting new players figure things out. That's an interesting approach. So you could say, like, as long as you're under level 10 or something, you can add or remove stats at will. But once you pass a certain threshold, they're like locked in. I feel like if you could communicate that to the player, it would be really cool to be able to add or remove stats. What I probably will end up doing for the demo specifically is adding or removing, but I still firmly believe that this will probably be where you want it to go. So just adding to your stats, but we'll see if I actually get there. Yeah, and at some level you get to pick some sort of specialization that locks you into something. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess it would be easy if you have some sort of, like, when you reach level 10, it says, like, congratulations, you can specialize, so you'll get these bonuses, but if you do that, then you're locked in and you can't remove stats or something like that. That's probably a good way to communicate the difference before and after the threshold, I guess. Let's clean up some of our hierarchy here. Level down stat. Let's turn him on, I guess. Guess it doesn't necessarily need to be all bunched up next to the stat icon. I kind of like it connected, like anchored on it though. Especially if we're not going to have like a border on each stat. Let's see how this looks for now. Need to lurk again? No worries. No worries. Happy to have you here. We are just coding away, so all is good. Let's maybe clear some of these. You know, that's looking better, I'd say. So we can just give it a stat name. Start with maybe black on this. Yeah, that looks way better. And we probably want some like explanation of the stat or like communicating what these secondary effects are. If you put a point in strength, what do you get? So I'm going to look back at our screenshots, and I guess it doesn't really communicate that on any of these. The closest is in Path of Exile. If you hover over one of these nodes, it says like +1 damage for every 5 intelligence or something. So we probably want to communicate that a point of strength does X, Y, and Z. So maybe we can start thinking through that. I think a really light background might be in order. Just for kind of delineating the different stats. Could do something light like that. Maybe. Seems fine. I mean, we could also just add like a hover tooltip on all these, but I would love to get it into the design somehow. I can't really concentrate. No worries, man. You do you. I gotcha. Have a great rest of your night as well. Thank you, thank you. Good to see you. We'll see each other in the next stream, whoever it is first. No worries. Good luck. And also this is going to look way better, I think, when we have an actual font in the game instead of this default, but for now it's probably fine. So what happens if we do a stat description? We kind of do a less harsh gray, cut the size to maybe 20, maybe less. Comic Sans, oof. Maybe not Comic Sans. We do something more like this, and then we could either have some proper text here, or we can just say like plus 10 max health every point allocated. Something like that. Probably use a proper verb instead of starting our sentence with a plus sign. Let's actually increase both of these. So we could do something like this. That doesn't really scale when we consider that we might want multiple effects. Like if we want strength to give us, say, max health and also max energy or something. It's kind of hard to write that out on both, but it is an idea. But it is nice and simple. I like that. I'm realizing these buttons are going to need to come in when we have multiple stats, though. Unless we just space them out hard. That's fine. 45, 48, 47. Yeah, these will only show when you have the stats to spend anyway. So is this fine? How can we I mean, we don't have two secondary effects currently. We probably will add two effects that you get for every point. So let's take this guy, let's bring him down, let's play with some other options. Because, I mean, we could just do a stack. Say game 10 max energy, and then these guys come up, like, it could just be stacked like this. I don't know that that looks good. Stacked and centered even. It's a lot of reused words. Could also do something like for every point allocated, gain plus 10 max health, plus 10 max energy. Bring these guys over to like that, and then probably color them a little bit. Nothing's lined up, but something like this could work, especially if we do some like styling around this box. Could have a for each point as a broad thing written to imply it applies to everything. Yeah, looks like you came to the same conclusion. Yeah, it would be nice, I would say, if we could have some sort of more visual representation of these stats, but I don't think that we will be able to without making it absolutely complex and hard to understand. Like, we could have an icon for max health and an icon for max energy, separate icons for like health regen, health regeneration rate, blah 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 blah, but you'd still end up needing to like hover over each to learn what they are. And once you knew what they are, you might be able to recognize them by icon, but I feel like we're gonna start adding so many stats that we probably just want to use text that's clear. Icons would make it very fast to identify what items do once you know. Yes. Yeah, the icons would also be nice on on items. Icons for common stuff, descriptions for more niche stuff. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, we could have like a health bar that says like plus 10 health bar. Kind of leaning towards the text here for now. I mean, at least until we get all the icons anyway. But yeah, it might be nice to standardize some of that language into icons later too. Because I mean, that almost makes items start feeling like almost like cards where they have keywords and stuff of like, if you have an item that says like gain 5 potion icon every time you sword icon or something. I mean, that's a bad example, but could be something like that. Let's see if we can stylize this bit, because I think this is probably the way we want to go. I think this list is fine, but if we could clean this up and make it less floaty, anchor it to something. Let's say secondary bonuses container. Let's anchor that over yonder. Put it over here. put these guys in it. Reset their transforms to center them within it. And then we'll do vertical layout group. Don't force expand the height. All right, everything's aligned. We could do layer on another background. I don't know that we want to do that. What if we did like a no, I don't think we want to do this. Let's get these also. +5 lips when you kiss. Heck yeah. I dig it. I'd use that item. I mean, do we want to put this on the left side maybe? And we can put it behind all this stuff. Is that the play? And then this side's, I mean, this is the focus side. This is more of a reference side. So we would even want to expand it out more like this, I'd say, like pill size with this centered. And then we do our reference over here. That could work. Rate plus Riz when you ration. Ratio I meant, but ration is way funnier. That looks pretty nice. Okay, cool. We're cooking. We got a rough edge over here, which I can fix. Let's say this is dark background. So we probably want to switch that up to paper 1 and just darken it this way, because then our edges will line up. Let's make it a little less, well, no, we could also, we could color it a little bit. We don't really have a standardized color for quote-unquote skills. So if we did, I would use that, but I think just darkening it up is fine. And I feel like it needs to be more like 2/3 instead of this weird 6/10. Something like this. So maybe we can reduce the transparency on this guy just a little bit to get more of that edge there. This is still very like noisy right here, and there's a lot of dead space here, so it doesn't look centered. But I don't know that I want to center this like that. I mean, I guess we could. What if we give this icon more breathing room? Actually, Level on the left. Now that's something. Because then we can anchor our text really well to the icon. I think this is still a little too big for the container though. But we could also make the container just a little bit bigger, and that would fit more potential secondary effects, I guess. But, oh right, one thing we probably should show, but don't show, is when you have, like if you had 18 strength, or if you had 15 strength, and you have an item equipped that says like +3 strength on it, this should probably show 18 strength, but we should probably show that it is like 15 plus 3, right? So we could do something. Let's move these guys out of the way. They're still a pain to work with. Maybe just show the current value and show a +X for the total amount of that, which comes from items. That's probably better. I always get mixed up, like, when you see 18 and, or like 15 plus 3, I guess. So if we did something like this, we make this guy white again, but we could also take our space Yeah, this is probably what we shouldn't do. If you have 18 total and you get +3 from stats, people are going to see this and be like, okay, do I have 18 or do I have 21? But maybe like up here. Could put this guy more like that. Maybe write total somewhere. That's a good idea too. Can I adjust line height on Text Mesh Pro? That would be great. Could do spacing. Don't think I can adjust the line height. Interesting. Huh. All right, let's throw in a total, black text, I don't think that we want this bonus inside the box. If writing total for every stat becomes too messy, maybe have a key that only shows it on the first stat, but keep the format the same. That makes sense. The bonus goes outside the box because the best way to get higher bonuses is to think outside the box, you know? You're not wrong. Could even say like from items. No, use one. +3. You know, that again is confusing though of do I have 18 or do I have 21? You know, this is slightly less confusing. Maybe it would be best to just show the number and have the bonuses and base show when you hover over it. Possibly also change the color of the number if it's being modified. That's how Fire Emblem does it. That is probably the correct thing. Maybe, yeah, I'll do this. Maybe I'll leave this for now. I could have it, if it's modified, it goes like green if it's above, or red if it's modified down. But for now, I'll just do the white here, and then we'll add in a tooltip later that has the breakdown. But I feel like, especially with that tooltip, you'll be able to see the math. Once you've seen it, you'll know like the number in the box is your total, and it's nice to see a little modifier up here. We can even do a little background. We'll say green. Do a round one. And let's get this guy scaled a little bit better. So let's say if he was plus 300, that'd actually be pretty hard to fit into a round container. So maybe we should use squares, but for now, this is fine. Maybe if you have more than 100 bonus, you get a smiley face, who knows. But we can do this. Do our background. This is gonna look really ugly, actually. We do a frame on top of that. Just get one of our circular frames like that. Don't want to make the text too much smaller. It's already 16 point. We could nix the plus sign, since we have colors to signify like whether it's better or not. So I guess with like plus 30, we'd be more like 49. And you'll be able to see your total, but also the bonuses that you've gotten from items. You could also stick this more on like, wait, where's our, oh. Right. Let's put that on him. We could also stick this on like this guy. So then you kind of have a separate data point effectively. It's not necessarily tied to that, but you could hover over that and see like a breakdown of all your bonuses, or hover over this and see the same breakdown. It's a little weird to do the same tooltip though. You know, it's not super important right now anyway. So maybe we will we'll do something like that for now. We'll move it around later, but we can at least rig up all the functionality for hovering over it. Then it's also, you see the bonus, you see the total. It's not the greatest looking, but it'll do. Let's go put it on this guy. Oh, right. We probably don't actually want to do this because we've got our buttons that we need to bring back in. So we'll just stick it over here for now. We'll come back to that bad boy. On the topic of stats, if an item has a stat requirement, will you allow the use of other items to make said stat thresholds reachable? I would say yes. I like when games do that, especially if you can't deallocate stats. I feel like if you just want to like throw on a amulet or something that gives you plus 10 strength so you can use another item, it makes sense to me. That's how I've always seen games do it too, but do you think that's a bad idea? Do you think that's how you would do it? I would say yes, though. I think it's a reasonable idea. I mean, I think the only wonkiness comes from what do you do with those items when you unequip the like prerequisite items that you equip? So if you needed that plus 10 strength amulet to equip a sword, you equip the sword and then you take off the amulet. It can be like not clear what happens to the sword, but I think you just like unequip it or something. Will you make it so the items being used to reach the thresholds are not unequipable, or will items only give you their benefits when you have the stats, but you can equip it anyway? Yeah, I think there's lots of different ways that you could do it. Like you could unequip them, you could require the equipped items to stay equipped, you could keep your new items equipped but they don't give bonuses, you could keep them equipped but like they give fewer bonuses, I guess might be an interesting way to do it. I feel like maybe just keeping them equipped and not giving bonuses is the least jarring thing, because if you're like playing with some item configurations in your inventory and you take something off and it happens to make it so you can't equip another item, I think it would be much nicer to just see that other item like have a red background or something to signify that it doesn't have, you can't get the stat effects from it, versus like that item being dropped into your inventory somewhere and you need to go find it. Maybe you don't even realize that you had accidentally unequipped this item because you were looking over here. I feel like just leaving the items in place with some sort of indicator saying, hey, this is equipped, but you're not benefiting from it because X, Y, and Z. You don't have the stats. That's probably the way to go. Yeah, I think so. Alright, I don't like this stat bonus bit, but we're going to leave it for now. We're going to move stuff around just a little bit. Let's actually put this guy in stat bonus container. Let's throw him up here and put that inside just so we can move on. Okay, so we can move that around. We can move level container a little bit over, I think. And we will just use this, I'd say, for all of our core stats. So it would start looking something like this. And then we probably just want to show like how many stats you have remaining to allocate. I think that'd be fine. Looks mostly good. If I were playing a game and I open this window, I think it would be fine. The text is a little small and a little hard to read over here, so we probably want to increase that contrast, but we can do that. That also just gives me the idea of, have you seen Encumbered Guy? He only uses strength gear but has no strength. He just deals with the encumbrance and has all of his stats and damage. I would find it a little weird that I have strength stats. You know, you gotta level up all 5 of them before you get 1 strength point, so players gotta just deal, I guess. Let's increase this contrast real fast. So these guys obviously need to be darker, but maybe we can... Yeah, it's hard to get those like bright colors when it's dark, so it's fine. And they're 20-point font. I feel like maybe we can even... One thing I wanted to avoid is this like naming inconsistency. Like max health is the casual way to write it, but the proper name is probably max health. And sometimes you might have like max health like this. But I feel like what we can do is just turn on all caps. And that probably makes it more readable too. Maximum health. Yeah, that's probably what we should use. You're right, you're right. Maximum health. Yeah, you're right. But we could potentially also use small caps, which would have something like this, which looks the same here. we turned on small caps on these, we get more, something like that. I feel like that looks really cheap. I don't particularly like that. But maybe it'd be good in like tooltips or something on titles. Maximum. Who's Max? You know Max. I barely know Max, but you know Max. This is his stats. I'm surprised you remember him. How could I forget? He came for the visit. Yeah, yeah. And does some cool Minecraft builds. I know I'm going to go down a rabbit hole of redesigning this again, but let's do a separator. I feel like we might be able to get something nice here. If we do inscription, this guy. We can even just make it super like faded, just a nice little spacing bit. Might be a little too flourishy. Is that better? I feel like that's worse. Definitely like separates the thoughts, and this is literally like mid-sentence separation, so don't think that that is the move. However, could do some separation up here. It's kind of unnecessary, but it is a good way to make it look a little centered. I probably go way too ham on these separators, but I think they look great. It's fine, I'd say. Everything needs centered and all that jazz, but that'll come naturally when we're building this from code. I'm just setting up the structure here. Other last things we could do, we could make the icon larger, especially since we're generating these nice icons. Kind of fill up the space a little bit more. I don't know if that's too large, but we certainly don't need all the space. Might look a little cheap. Yeah, I think besides the stat bonus container, it's looking pretty good now. We can work with that for sure. Let's throw a vertical layout group. Oh boy. Oh right. Oh no, we broke everything. So this guy needs stretched all the way. This guy has no height, I bet. Okay, he has height. Why does this guy have no height? Stretch, stretch. element, ignore layout. Layout element, ignore layout. We add a vertical layout group back to this guy again. This guy has negative width because that makes sense. So control child width and do our padding of 64 and probably like 72. So now, if we create a couple of these, well, oh right, they're not more containers. We create more of these guys, more stats. So not force expand height, but we can start adding stats, and they add just fine. Let's get this top spacing a little bit higher. Because I want to leave a little bit of room up here for like a title or like a stat count. But I think this looks fine. You open this up, there's your main stats. You'll get a full list of all your stats down here, but you're not really interacting with those, you're interacting with these. Alright, that looks cool. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and you know what? I've never tried the... Let's do this. I'll take a quick bathroom break, we'll do this bottom bit, and then maybe we'll get back to code. I've turned off ads for this stream, just for funsies, and so what I'm going to try is I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'm going to run some ads manually, and you guys should have some water. Get up and stretch, do whatever you need to do. I'll tab out. I'll be back in a couple minutes. I don't know how many I can run, just a couple minutes, but be right back. Alright, this is probably awkward for subscribers who don't get ads, but I'm gonna go to the BRB screen anyway when I find it. Be right back. Alright, we are back. We had 1 minute of ads. That's apparently all I can run. So enjoy the BRB screen. I realized it probably is awkward for people who subscribe and don't get ads because you just watch me leave. But alright, let's finish up the rest of this UI. I'd love to blow through it a lot faster. But where were we? Ah, yes. So we're just gonna grab this guy, bring him on down yonder. Probably leave a little bit of space, but main difference is we are gonna need a scroll rect in here, and we're going to just need lines of text. I wonder if we can actually just do scrolling on TextMesh Pro. Let's try that. So if we have a bunch of lines and it's only this tall, is there scrolling? Overflow, scroll rect? That's suspicious. I don't think that works the way I think it does. Let's look it up. How does this work? The scroll rect overflow mode isn't working and should be ignored until you get around to tweaking it. Okay, 6 years ago. Not sure there is still a valid use case for it. Great, great. Should be able to achieve what you're doing with the scroll view. Sure, sure, sure. Seems like this is back from when it was first getting started. Scrollable text block. Nope, don't care about a video. You need TextMesh Pro and a scroll rect. Okay. I wonder if this is actually the correct way to do what I've been doing, which is adding like a content size fitter to scroll or to text, which allows it to resize itself correctly so I can scroll across it in a scroll rect. Maybe, but that's what we're gonna do here. So if we do a content size fitter, preferred size, now the content is sized to the actual size of the text, but I'm wondering how we want to like stylize per line. Unless we have like a repeating background. It's probably fine to just have the text, to be honest. Let's just do a scroll rect. UI scroll view. I hate these things. But expand this guy already. What? Why'd you go up there? Why do you have 0 height? Nobody knows. 200. Can I just... Alright, we'll do it manually. Let's get rid of our paddings off this guy. Or... let's just reduce the top and bottom. Right. Alrighty, time to unstyle this. Let's get rid of the background image. it is a scroll rect. We want scroll sensitivity of like 90. Never show horizontal scroll bar. Delete the horizontal scroll. Delete the horizontal scroll bar even. Viewport has the UI mask. Content is weirdly dimensioned. No width, but that's fine. I hope. But if we add some Text Mesh Pro to this bad boy, stats list. Yes. So this must have 0 width. It does. Why? Have I already broken a scroll view? None of this is acting like I expected to. Okay, so this now has a width. It's an incorrect width, but it does have a width. Sure. All right, stats list. Cool. And it's gonna have a lot of stats. And so we want to do is add component content size fitter with a vertical fit, which sizes it as large as the text. We need to set a top anchor and align it to the top so when it expands downward. And then the mask isn't correct. What's going on here? Why is everything not even working out of the box? So this has dimensions. Curious why I can't. Oh, it's still got a vertical layout group on it. That probably is why everything broke. So now we should be able to expand it all the way. Yes. And then our stats list, we can expand. Right. Like that. Our scroll view all the way down is fine. I think this needs to keep the image for the raycast to hit it correctly. This guy, can we set padding on him? No, that's fine though. We can just Do that, and then we decrease the viewport size. Or I guess just the whole scroll view. Sure. So let's do it like right where it's cut off by the border so they know that there can be scrolling. Looks good. Cool, cool, cool. Let's play and make sure that that scrolls correctly, because it never does on the first try. Why did I think it might? We also need to get this scroll on the top to not overlay with the border. But why? Why? So stats list is a big height. I feel like I've literally never used a scroll rect and have it work as expected, which is crazy because I literally only ever use scroll rects in the exact same way. So why are you bouncing back? Movement type unrestricted should let me, yeah, but that doesn't give me borders on the edges. If I do clamped, can't scroll at all. So I do want elastic, because that lets me scroll a little bit past, but it scrolls back to the edges. So why? I'm wondering if it's literally just because we had that content size fitter, or the vertical layout group. If I just do scroll view here, and I make it big, and I drop in the exact same text, will this work? Does not scroll at all. Wonder if it's because the one beneath it is catching it. Does not scroll at all. Okay. Oh, right, because stats list isn't in content. It wasn't parented. Okay, this doesn't work either. So we can throw a giant image in here. See if it's the Text Mesh Pro's fault? Nope, this snaps back too, even though it's clearly larger than the viewport. Okay. So what we're going to do now is go get one and just copy it. This guy is a working scroll view. Sure. Now he's over here. He's in our spot. You know what? I don't even want to set those bounds yet. I just literally want to resize it. Let's see if that... Well, that's obviously not going to scroll because there's no content in it. You forgot to come back after break? Oh yeah, I forgot to tell people to come back. That's my bad. Sorry you've been in purgatory for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however long. Let's put a bunch of stuff in here. Okay, it's got stuff. Should scroll. Hopefully. If it doesn't, I have no idea what the problem could be then. But surely, yeah, that scrolls. Okay, so some way that this scroll rect is configured that is different from this one. We're gonna disable this guy. We'll enable our guy. Lock that. So what's different? Scroll sensitivity, but that doesn't matter. We have killed our horizontal scroll bar. I wonder if that could be an issue, but we can just go take one. And surprise, surprise, that is now our new horizontal scroll bar. But that's the only change, right? Why is this more lines? Horizontal scroll bar. I mean, auto hide, I guess. And expand viewport. I feel like surely that's not it, but it's not like I know why it's working anyway. Let's turn that off. Let's go back to scroll view 2, lock that in, play. Scroll views are configured the exact same way now. So surely okay. So that tells me we should take all this junk, put it in here. This should scroll. Why do we see? Oh. Okay, it does scroll. So it's a problem with our Text Mesh Pro. Oh, right. It's like, why is this re-enabling the second scroll bar? It's because I was re-enabling the second scroll bar. I had my inspector locked. Alright, so what? So this isn't actually scrolling. Dimensions on both look roughly the same. Dimensions on the viewports look roughly the same. Dimensions on the content look very different. And that is because this has a size fitter and this does not. Wow. Okay. I do think that that is the fix, and hopefully we'll be out of jail. So this guy has a stat. All we gotta do is put a vertical layout group on this guy so he's included in the layout, and then a content size fitter on him as well so he is resized to his children's size. Ta-da! Okay, I'm so confident that this will work. Probably don't even need to test it, but Alright, we can scroll now. Great. Alright, let's fix that top border, bottom border, I think. Oh, we just need to update the viewport on the top, and then let's populate this with data. Let's just get it done. So here we're updating the viewport, I believe, or the scroll view itself. So we'll do that. We will bring him on in, and then here we can do a little bit of top padding. So we're not just running up to on top, but we want to put it on a margin on the text, so when we're scrolling, it doesn't stop scrolling here, it still stops scrolling up there. Let's actually do... Yeah, that's fine. Okay, cool. That is fine. It's fine. Okay, so now we can finally start breaking up some code or working on some models. Let's go ahead and maybe do scriptable objects for each of these stats, because that's going to be the easiest way for us to, one, swap out different stats later, or two, generate new stats later. Otherwise, we're building the layout and hard coding in, like, this is the strength stat button. We kind of need some stat to iterate over to build all this with. So we're going to go ahead and start a new system. Wow. Even though we kind of have stats. We have a stat container somewhere in here. But let's just call it stats. Cool, cool, cool. We'll go with models. Yeah, we also have interesting relationship with item effect handlers, which I guess all they do is use stats. So that's fine. We don't necessarily need to bring them over. Let's go character stat. Let's even make it more specific. We'll call it a displayed character stat, since none of these will actually have, well, I guess they will have some logic. Because the way we're going to rig up our stats to be stored is every entity that has stats, like the player, enemies, NPCs, etc., they'll have a stats container component on them, which provides default stat levels if nothing has been set, but also stores the actual state of stat changes. So when you equip something, it'll go update that stat base there. So I think we don't actually, well, the stats themselves are these affixes. So we will reuse item effects enum there with all the different stats that can be modified, but we will make a scriptable object for these core stats, because that needs the name here, an icon, it needs a level, attached to it, and also it needs a list of item stats that it modifies for every point that you add to it. So let's, I guess, go ahead and write that. So that's going to be a scriptable object. So it's going to need a public string display name. We'll do a base value of 1. Probably don't need decimal stats, but I do like to have the float as the data type anyway, just for in case we add decimals later. It's a lot harder to move from ints to floats than optimize floats to ints. But I don't see a case where we're going to have like 49.5 as a level that we need to store. We might have 49 as the level and then compute like a percentage based on remaining XP. But maybe we just, let's call this base level. Having items that give percent bonuses might be nice, but that would cause need for decimals. Yes. We've got a really cool system for our item effects. They do support both adding, like, additively and multiplicatively. But I'm specifically thinking of like the core stats here where, yeah, I guess you might have an item that says like plus 10% strength even. Yeah, you're right. It'll be float, but we'll just display it, I think, in these boxes as ints, but probably down here it gets the full float. You're right. Base level 1, we need a public sprite icon. We need a list of stat modifiers and the amount they modify. So I think, let's go look at one of our items, see if we can use the item effect. But I don't think so, unless we want to like ignore a bunch of data. It's probably better to just build a new object. But we want what will end up being an effect of like, yeah, I guess we don't need the full effect because it'll have like application and removal and effect names and descriptions and stuff. So what we'll do is just do a list of tuples of item stat, or what is our stat enum? Okay. Item effect dot stat modifier. So we'll have a item effect dot stat modifier and a float, and we can say that this specifically is a amounts to add to stat when leveled up. And I don't think we're going to be able to serialize that, but let's go see. So if we go down and we make a core stats folder, oh right, we need to make this creatable. New character stat, let's call it a core stat. Because I guess we could have different core stats on like other NPCs too, because they're used in the context of decision making and stuff. We just say here are all of their stats, here are their values. So it could be cool to have different stats on different people too. And I guess that'd work well in if you're trying to sell them an item that has like +5 intelligence or something, and they don't even have intelligence as a stat, they're not going to value that very high. Could be cool. Core stats. Create core stat strength. Now, let's make this public so it appears in the editor. Hopefully. See if we get a list of tuples. I don't think the Unity editor can serialize tuples, so yeah, I guess not. How do we want to do this? Let's do a serializable public class level up stat award. And so that can have a public item effect, a stat modifier, stat to increase, and amount to add. Because we're not worrying about multiplication here. And then we can have a public list level up stat award. So we can have a list of these nice serializable objects that definitely aren't just tuples. And it worked. Hurrah! So now we can say display name strength base level 1. Probably actually doesn't even need to live on this, but should probably be on the actual like NPC you have these stats on, but it's fine. Icon strength, and then we can start adding stat awards when you level up this stat. So we can say 1 is max health, amount to add 10, and we can also say max energy. Oh right, we don't have that in yet. Let's just fire resistance, amount to add 68. And so we can start making stats this way, and then we'll add these stats to the player, and then from that player store of stats, when we open this window, we can iterate over all those stats, populate this full box, because we'll have the player's stat from the stat container, and then we'll have all of the player's stat level, and then we'll have all the information about the stat from the actual stat object. So we can build that. And we'll just build this separately off of the stats container. So I think this is all we need. Let's create our other ones. Let's remember what they are. But I'm going to add some random awards here just so we have more lines to fill in this, because I want to make sure it scales when we add stuff later. So strength. We also have dexterity. Dexter, as they call it. I cannot type today. Dexterity, cool, cool, cool. And you're gonna give harvest speed and move speed. Sure. You know what? You're also gonna give max health of 1. Why not? We need 3 affixes. Next up, intelligence. This will give max mana when I find it. I really wish there was a good way to reorder or sort enums. But once you have any amount of data that use them, the actual value gets stored as like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of the actual option you select. So if you ever change the order of these options, or remove options, or add new options to the middle instead of at the end, it messes up all of your data. And everything that was like belt size is now peripheral vision, because the 9 that meant this now means this, and so on. This is intelligence, so let's do model scale. Get your head real big. And maybe also harvest yield of 8. So getting some different values. Wisdom. That'll increase your critical harvest progress by 5. Do we have an image for that? We do not. Yeah, we got 2 intelligence ones. We'll do that. Speaking of, this needs to be intelligence. Cool, cool, cool. Last one, constitution. And for that, we'll have no effects. Let's just do the potion. So no effects on him. I think we have 0, 3, 2, 2, 1. Yeah, that's fine. We'll probably never get a case where there's 4. Cool. So there's our core stats. What we can now do is go to the player controller, or our player script, and we're going to start adding to our entity stats container just a list of core stats. Call that core stats, surprisingly enough. And then we can drag those 5 in for the player. And then if we add stats containers to this NPC or enemies or something, we can bring in different core stats if we want. Which might be relevant when you set up like cool core stats that have effects, like, I don't know, something cool. If you have a core stat of vampiricism or something, every point gives a lot of this and this and this. You apply that stat to vampires. Who knows? Let's bring these guys in. Lock that so I can select multiple things. Now the player has core stats, and we want strength first, then dexterity, then intelligence, wisdom next to that, and constitution. Cool. So now we should be able to build this full window in code. So let's do that. I'm realizing we forgot a couple things in this window, but I'm not going to go back and do them now. We forgot a display for how many stat attribute points the player has to spend. We probably want like a confirm button, maybe. Probably not, actually. A couple other like little displays for other data that we're going to add later, but we're not going to mess with that right now. We want to populate this. So now we can go to our stats window, get rid of the skills window manager on it, and start coding our stats window manager, which I will immediately go look up skills window manager to see if there's any like setup that we want to do. Right, that's the methods. So we have some callbacks on UI window that get called when you show or hide windows. We want to, in callback before window show, populate all the data with whatever the most recent data is. So in here, we just say callback before window show, do our stuff. And that will be private or public void refresh draw refreshed data, redraw, refreshed data. So this will redraw the whole UI element public, so we can call it, like if we equip something and it changes stats, we can just hit it up. But if it's going to be redrawing everything, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than just like updating the text of what changed. So I just want to pull it out instead of just doing it here because I don't want to accidentally reuse that later. So the things that we need to do are, for each stat in the player's core stats list, draw the core stat container and populate it with data. We also want to iterate over the, what did we call the other bit of the stats container? Just like the stats pool. I guess it's encode. That is current stat value, sure. And that'll be every key value that we have in the current stats value, so it's been modified in some way, gets added to this list. And we'll probably have to eventually add like pruning to current stats values, adding and removing of stuff, because if you add +5 intelligence to bring intelligence up to 6 from a default of 1, and then you remove that +5, you'll be back at 1, but it'll still be in the dictionary unless you prune stuff out when they get back to their original default value. So we'll do that later, but that's why we're going to see that bug if we do it this way. And then other stuff that we'll do off stream, I think. Populate the attribute points yet to spend, and we probably want to, depends on how we implement these buttons. They might have methods to call on themselves that apply to the current stat, or we might do an interface in here. But we can do this. So core stats container, we just turn into a prefab, set it on the component, and then instantiate it and populate it with data. So we will do that real fast. In our stats system, let's add a prefabs folder and then turn core stat container into that. And what I like to do on these is give them some data that's not real data. So if you accidentally don't set something, it's very, very obvious. So we're going to do 42 there. Stat name, your mom, or you know what, probably not data that is embarrassing if you have it in, blah, blah, blah. Boring stat, I'm sorry. And these guys, +10 maximum giggity. Sure. Cool, so let's give it a default width because I don't know why Unity does this. 1080. And cool, we should be good to go. We'll probably need to add a script to this. So let's start that by saying core stat container UI manager. Open that up because we'll be editing it in a second, but now we can just say in our stats window manager we have a public game object prefab core stat container that will set to that prefab we just created, and then let's say redraw, blah, 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 call our method that we're working on. We want to first clear the current core stats list. You can do it. So that's not correct, but we can say get a reference to our container of where those core stats will be. Let's go back and look. One of these days I'll go figure out why this takes so long to compile each time. I think it's just all of our assets. But we'll get our skill levels, grid container, that's core stats container. So this will be transform ref core stats container. We say for each child in it currently, which we'll need to move these background and frame out of, but that's fine now that we've done the design mostly. Is it fine? We're going to be changing the design. I mean, we can just skip over it if we know the name. That's pretty brittle. I mean, the fix is to move it out here, so we can just kill all these. We can remove these child objects. But if these are out here and we want to change like these dimensions later, it doesn't have that reference. So alternatively, we could like query to see if it has a layout element, and it says ignore layout. It's kind of lame. I think actually let's just say core stats container list. We put it in here, and then that'll be our reference. And hopefully that's fine. If we put all this in here, we would just need to remove this, move it over here. And I actually want to copy those values that we had. This guy, copy component, paste component. Get rid of this layout group and anchor that guy correctly. Cool. So now we can use this as a reference, remove all of its child objects, and then populate it with new child objects. So let's do that. So that's our thing, that's our other thing, and then the last thing that we need to do is populate in those new lines and load them full of data. So we can say for each player database instance dot. I'm also wondering, oh yeah, I was gonna say we could put the stats in the player database, but we don't want to do that because we want it to be on the object itself, because we'll be adding stats to other objects. So we actually want to get from the player database to the object itself, which is the controller, and then we can say get component of entity stats container dot core stats. And I actually am realizing I think we already have a quick reference to this in player database. Do we have a list of the stats here yet? Yes. This is just the same, just a quicker way where you can avoid getting the component. So it's actually .instance .stats .base stats. I think we'll want to rename that. I don't think we want this to be a base stats container. That's what we started out with, but I think we want to just... Nah, it probably does need to be base stats. I think that's the only way to do both additive and multiplicative changes to the stats, because you can't add 5 multiplied by 2 and then subtract 5 when you unequip the first item. I gotta go for some D&D stuff, so see you around. Good luck at D&D. Hope you have fun. Thanks for all the chat. So on the player's stats, for each of the core stats, we create a new core stat container of our thing in the correct parent, and then we will set core stat data. Not that. We want to generate that method. Cool. So in each core stat container, we'll just do references to all these things that we need. Public image stat icon, public text mesh pro UGI, stat name, stat level, and then so here we'll probably want to do a same sort of thing where we're building these and ignoring the outside bits. So we just do affixes container, move it over here, and then put these two in here. So we can remove these children and then add new ones with the list. But I'm going to try something new that I haven't done. Instead of doing a prefab, I wonder what the implications are if I do a, like, just an object that I'm copying? Nah, that's dumb. We'll just use a prefab for each line. I was just avoiding it because it's literally like just a text mesh pro object, but 'tis fine. Alright, so in this, let's see what else we need. So we will need stat level, stat name, icon, public stat. That'll have all the actual data that we're getting from this. We'll complete that in a second. Last things that we need are public game object, prefab, point allocation modifier. Point allocation modifier line, sure. 'Tis fine. But we will create one of those in this container for every stat data dot level up bonuses or whatever we called it. Alright, so now we can auto-complete these. Stat name is going to be .display name, stat data. Good, that's where we can start using the system we already have, and that is player database dot instance dot base stats. That is technically correct, but we want get base stat for stat data. Oh, the default is not optional. Okay. We're going to make that optional, because I don't think we even want to pass that through, but we'll keep it for now. Oh, to stat modifier. Right. So really, the core stat actually should have a stat modifier associated with it. So what we should do is go to our core stat and add that. Public item effect dot stat modifier. Display stat or associated stat. And so now whenever this core stat is displayed, we can just show it like a stat instead of a core stat. So we can say associated stat, right? Float to string. Is associated stat a float? Question mark? Does it really want that second parameter? No? What here is a float? That's a core stat. That's a stat modifier. Oh, the whole thing is a float. And we're setting it to text mesh pro. Okay. And now display the level up bonuses. We do that. We will skip this line, we'll do it manually, but first we want to also clear what is there. For each game object, hold bonus in public transform ref affixes container or bonuses container. So for each thing in that, remove it. And then in here we will parent it under that and then say, so here's our level up bonus description. Make that a prefab. And then in here we can say new point allocation modifier line dot get component text mesh pro UGI dot text is equal to whatever we want it to say. And I think we have a method for this somewhere. If we don't, we should, or if we don't have it accessible, we should make it into like a service, formatting service or something. But we do this in item tooltips. Yes, this here, where we build the string from the stat modifier type and value and label. So we probably don't want to be copying that everywhere, but it builds our strings like +6 dexterity or ×3 strength or whatever the stat is based on the semantic data that we've set of like whether it's additive or multiplicative and what value and so on. So we have this. I think I'll just do this temporary line here just for now because I don't want to do all that refactoring now. I'm trying to finish this up, but we're gonna say award, we'll just say plus award dot amount to add with a space plus the string name. We'll call that display name. Cool, so it'll say +5 dexterity. So that should work, right? Can we just open this whole thing and it works? Let's make sure our references are set and test it out. That's suspicious. Oh, we have compilation errors. Right. What have we done? For each core stat, and that, link this to that, What else we got? Because we need this to rebuild so we can set those references in here. Cool. Now we have these. Stat icon. Stat name. Stat level. Core stat. Right, that's set by the window showing this prefab. So let's designate that somehow. What is this class? Core stat container. Required state buying anything that instantiates this. Wonder if that'll wrap or whatever, but should at least put it in its own section to make it more obvious. Cool. So that will be set. Point allocation modifier line is whatever this was, so right, we got it here. And then level up bonuses container is that bad boy. Now that should be good to go. Let's go up to the window. Stats window. Does it not need a reference to the core stats? Oh, it does have that. Okay. So it should kill all these, repopulate it with our actual data, theoretically. It did not. Wait, it might still, because we're doing all this logic on before window show, and that never fires if we don't open the window. If it's just defaulting on, it's gonna not fire. However, we don't have a button to open the window, so it's time to yak shave some more. So we want the HUD, go in, hotbar, left hand side, let's create another one. Stats button. And this guy needs a new icon. A new icon, that is. Let's see what we got. Anything good? We'll use this for now. Let's update our tooltip text to say stats. Close that. And now stats button, we need to update to show the stats window instead of the skills window. And that's just going to be on click, stats window, show window. We can get rid of these. They're kind of stopgaps for multiple windows being open at once. So that should now work. Now we can actually test it. Let's close this and cross our fingers. Okay, we've got our stats menu. We can't move, so there's already issues. Huh. Interesting. You know what? We'll look at that another day. Well, we'll update that in a sec. You know what? Let's just fix it now. It's a super simple fix. references, UI references. I bet this is null. Yes. So, bonus. Bonus catch bar is somewhere. Where would I put that actually? I mean, that explains why it's null. I don't know where it would be. Or what it's even called. Is it this? No. It's the old info bar. No. I wonder if it got lost in the bad merge conflict I resolved before stream. So what we'll do is just do a little replace me with fall harvest bar when you find it. So we're going to drop him over out of view. We will go to our UI references, and that is what we'll use. Is that a terrible thing to do? Am I going to forget about this? It's probably fine. Alright. Apparently we still can't move. It's a lot of stuff broken, and I think it is related to that merge. Because it's on a bunch of interactable stuff, which is what we were merging, and a lot of this stuff is missing. So, yeah, we're going to ignore all that for now. We will actually play and open the window we're actually working on. But we won't be able to run around. That's fine. Yeah, I think all our like fall harvest stuff got lost in the merge, maybe. But we should be able to at least open the stats window. Okay, this is fine. We're just oh, what's the actual object I get back from this? Is it a transform? Wonder if it's, I should be able to cast between the two, but and this is all strings which we can concatenate. Should be fine. Shouldn't be any other casting. This is a list of that, so yeah, should be fine. Let's try this again. That was line 30. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So we do have some errors on tooltips. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to fix, I guess. I'm glad we've been isolated in the UI and code. But click that. Cannot remove rect transform because Text Mesh Pro depends on it. What is it trying to... So I think it's trying to remove these TextMesh Pro objects. But for some reason it's struggling to remove the object because the component on it, the TextMesh Pro, still depends on it. Let's see if specifically destroying the object and not the transform on it fixes that. So now, object reference not set, which is fine. On display, oh right. We don't actually want display name where we did that. Here, we want .toString, right? It's just an enum. Okay, but that object reference not set to an instance of an object. So that tells me stat to increase is probably null on this level up award. Or amount to add. Oh, you know what? Well, so stats with no level up awards. It's not even going to go into the loop. But let's look at these. Stat to increase, yeah, those have them. I mean, they're enums, so I don't think they can be null, right? Amount to add is all set on everything. I wonder if it is. This doesn't seem right, but we can wrap it. I feel like it's not going to do that loop anyway. This is a transform, okay. We'll just look for ourselves. Alrighty, we play, we open the window, it will drop us off into a breakpoint, and we will be able to see the current state. If we press play and it error, that's what was errored. Or what is erroring. Oh, it's before we even get to the breakpoint. Do we get that error? Interesting. This award has stat and amount to add. Sure. Let's step over and make sure we don't error there. Okay, we're fine. If we continue 2, 3, 4, 5 times, we get through all of our stats. Okay, we're getting closer. Whatever that last thing was, errored. Well, okay, we're back to this. You know what? We're gonna do this anyway, so we can do it now. It just kind of masks the problem that it is null. It shouldn't ever be null except for like if this player controller gets put in other scenes that wouldn't have it. So it's nice to have the safety check, but it kind of it's not great. Okay, so we need a vertical layout group on these affixes, but they are getting added. They are not formatted well, critical harvest progress. But they are getting added. I feel like we're going to need to make this right side bigger. just to fit these affixes in. So back to UI we go. Stats window. Stats list, core stats, secondary bonuses container. We want a vertical layout group, right? That's not great. Fill the space, please. It's like aligning to the actual layout objects or something. Affixes container, vertical layout group. Thank you. Expand this. We don't force expand height. We do mid upper left. Upper left. Is that up? Lower left is at the top? Right, okay. So now it'll expand downward. So if we add more, it'll just go down like that and then apparently go up. Huh, but it will at least expand downward without realigning the first, second, or potentially third line. Really, it's only ever going to have two, so we just want to make sure they look good. And then let's bring this back over. And let's take this dark background back. Maybe to there. Sure, that's fine, that's fine. Let's apply those prefabs. So now the text should have about enough space to not wrap, and it should also align on top of each other. So we do need to make these a bit. Right. Let's go all the way, why not? So these each should be the full width of the space. And we'll see, I don't think that transform dimension changes propagate to the actual prefabs. So we're going to take this width of 370, we're going to go in here, give it a width, don't do any of this jazz, don't make it upside down, you know, good stuff. So now it's not weird. Except some of them are upside down now, but apparently I had a negative y on all of these before, so you know, it's great. Just don't do anything. Why is something above you? Oh, that also explains why lower left was in fact in the upper left. So we actually do want upper left. Cool. Okay. Things are less weird now. Hopefully. Let's see how this looks. got our breakpoint. Let's actually remove that, disconnect from Unity. We have stats. All of the affixes are upside down for whatever reason, probably because we need to go update that prefab too. But we do have stats, and they have data associated with them. We still need to update that positioning a little bit in the prefab, but basically there. Hey there, Surat. How's life? Life is good. You know, I had some good calls earlier today with the other developer on this project, Andrew. We're both real pumped for some stuff coming up. We decided we're going to shoot for the next Steam Next Fest, so we're kind of heads down crunching this month to make sure it's ready for it in October, I think the deadline was, or when the event was. So we're just here, you know, carving out some systems we needed done. I was excited, so just decided to stream a little bit, and we're getting closer to the end of it. But basically we have these players in this world. Obviously you play as them. You have stats now, so we already had like item effects that would do like max health, max mana, attack, damage, blah blah blah. So all that could be modified. Those were stats. But we didn't actually show the player any stats yet. We now have a stats window. We have actual like core stats, so every time they level up a skill, they get some points they can spend into these core stats. And then we're gonna rig it up to where those core stats apply, like strength gives you max health, blah blah blah. We are slowly making our way through that, and all this is in preparation of hopefully getting like combat in the game sometime soon. But before we do all that, we need these kind of like underlying systems of how we want stats to work, how we want like weapons to work, projectiles, stuff like that, where there's a lot of work to be done before we can just stick some monsters in and click on them to attack them. So this is the first one of the bunch. I need to plan out the rest, but I might do streams for them too. It's nice to have like a specific task that I'm doing on stream. But let's take a look at how things look. We still have a lot of errors in the project. I did a pretty nasty merge resolution right before the stream without even realizing that was a terrible thing to do. So we're actually missing a bunch of the stuff that I need to add back in. Oh, and our zoom is broken. We fixed that on stream. This specific bug on stream last stream. So I wonder if those changes got clobbered somewhere along the way too. Dang. Is that epic music coming from your streaming? Yes. We are also working our way through. We are now 50 songs in the Octopath Traveler soundtrack, which is, as you say, pretty epic. Some good vibes in here so far. There's apparently 85 tracks, so we got a little bit to go, but the song that you think is epic is Decisive Battle 2, which is apparently a pretty epic song. So good call out. Alright, stats. They are still upside down, but we have the data in. Great. Let's figure out why they're upside down, and also let's make this quick fix of else if the level up stat awards count is 0, we want to hide that label of for every attribute you spend on this, you get blah blah blah. Or, you know what, we could just say no bonuses. That would complete the sentence. And maybe we say like hidden bonuses, because these are used in some stuff, but it's not very obvious. We'll say no bonuses. Cool. So why are these affixes upside down? So if we go down to untouched, oh, I guess these are not quite the prefabs. Let's bring in a level up bonus description. So it gets added without being upside down. Suspicious. This, oh, I see. So one prefab up, we had adjusted the negative Y scale on the parent, but we didn't apply that to the prefab. So things should be good. 10 maximum giggity. Yes. As I added these stats, I mentioned that it's usually a good idea to have some ridiculous text that looks similar to correct text but is ridiculous in your prefab text, because if you forget to fill it in, like if this said strength and plus 10 maximum health, I might not realize that that stuff didn't get filled in. So it's nice to have something that's more obvious instead of just at a glance things looking normal. Cool. So that worked. It's now upright, but we only have one stat now. So where'd our other stats go? When we add multiple, they do stack. Stats container list is going to be populated off of our core stats here. We have 5. It did say boring stack or boring stat, so I bet there was just an error and we didn't see it with all these other errors we've got going on. We'll take another look. Oh, you know what? It's because I pressed play when the window was open. And as we mentioned earlier, all this logic happens when you open the window itself. So that never fires if the window is already open when the game launches. So we're going to click that button, which opens the window, which fires all the data collection. All right, we have stats. They don't look great. We'll need to figure out how to better translate like enum keys into proper humanized strings, but it works. So now we just need to give some stats, hook up these buttons to modify what this is displaying. We need to get the actual display in here. I guess we can do that next. It's probably the easiest because we can just take some gear, equip it on there. This goes ahead and modifies the player base stats object, which is what this is a visualization of. So we should have a way to test it already. Wow, this UI is really coming together. It's still pretty janky in some places, but I'm excited for it. It's nice to be able to just open the windows you need and, you know, everything's ready for you instead of being in my head. Cool, let's rig this up. So that is going to be back in our stats window manager. We're going back down here to total stat changes. We have our stats list here, so we're going to need a public text mesh pro UGI ref stats list text. I guess we skipped some steps here, but that's what we're doing here. So this, bring this into that loop because that's what we did. Iterate over the stats container. So here we'll say for each key value pair of stat modifier and float stat in the base stats current stats values. It's actually just base stats dot current stat value. Ref stats list text will add that stats key, which is the stat, and then the value. Yeah, that checks out. And then add a new line so the next line can do it. Alright, so that's fine. Cool. Let's test that. That was super simple. Yeah. I guess this is a good test if our item system actually modifies stats or not. Huh. Alright, we don't want to run it when the window's already open though, but also sure looks like our window control button's exit button does not do that. We want it to hide window. Cool. Alright, now we can at least hide it or close it if we open. If we play with it open. Wow. Alrighty, so we opened this. Right, I clicked on the ground and therefore there were errors. Too many errors. I'm not looking forward to fixing that. That's rough. But that's probably the actual error we got, is we didn't set that reference. So we will do that when it's done compiling yet again. Okay, so we want ref stats list text, which is this guy. Right? If I enable this stats list text. Yes. So now should work. Stats. Okay. There's no error. Which tells me that that dictionary is empty. And so this for each loop never fires at all. So this text never gets updated. So one thing we definitely want to do is set it to blank beforehand in case that does happen. If there's absolutely no stats on the player, we should show it blank instead of whatever that said before that. But that tells me that equipping items does not modify the base stats. Interesting. Did I end up implementing like the stat modifiers? Oh, I don't think I did, but that's what I will end up doing. So we are using this, so if it's not actually being set, that's a problem. That would explain why I think our harvest modifier was broken. Not doing anything. Okay. So... Oh, I see. Yeah. We are updating it by hand in our item effects when they're applied to you. Only for harvest speed though. So we're gonna end up needing to do that in every item effect, because I don't think that where we call this here, when we say like apply consumable effect on an object or on a consumable item, we go through all of its stat modifiers and we apply that stat effect to the player or to the object. We can't necessarily update the stat up here too, can we? Unless we have... I guess we could do... We have effect.stat to modify. We have the application type, which is fine. We don't need to worry about that. But we also have the operator, effect dot modifier type, which is like add, multiply, set, whatever. We've got the value. So we could use all that to derive these changes to the stat. We probably should do that instead of putting the code in every single handler and then obviously forgetting it some cases. It just gives us more control over it if we add it to the effects, but I think we will end up doing it up here. And so therefore, for example, in our harvest effect, all we're doing here is setting that value, so it actually doesn't have an effect other than the actual stat change. So that actually helps. We can make a lot of affixes very fast if they literally just change a stat. But let's take this. We'll need to do the undo as well, but let's take that to show what we're doing. And let's go over here and we'll put in some logic here of, you know, we have apply consumable effect here. I'd love to go one step further and do it for applying any effect. So let's see where this is called. So when you use a consumable on an object, when you equip an item, add it to an equipment slot, and when you consume an item, a consumable. So all of those, I feel like we could just have a apply effect of this object. And then in that we check to see if it's a consumable or whatever and call all these. But I feel like apply effect might be a good place to add stat change stuff and like other global stuff that's across all stats. So let's do that. Say public void apply effect, item effect, game object target, and then we can do a switch on effect dot application type case blah 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 dot or oh right. We don't necessarily know how this item effect is applied. Right? No, we do. It's the item type. We don't have a reference to the item though. Yeah, so So we can maybe do something like this. And then at the top of each of these, we can just apply global. And then here we can say like, if the target.compare tag is the player, then we update player stats, otherwise update target object stats. Player stats are that, but we need some logic in like, oh right, this is also, we don't quite have the math we need to know if this is multiplicative or not. We need the wrapping object. What's that called? So this is called here an item effect. No, we have everything we need, I think. I'm going back and forth today. I'm so tired. I'll probably stream just a little while longer, but not too much longer. But let's at least just fix this up real fast. So we want in here, if effect dot application type, no, if effect dot, what is that called? Stat modifier type. Modifier type. Okay. If effect dot modifier type is equal to that dot add, then we will add to that dictionary. Otherwise, we will multiply it. I know that's not quite correct when you do these operations in different orders, like add a +5 item, then ×2, then remove the +5 item. But we're gonna re-architect our stat storage, I think. Maybe I'll do it next stream, maybe I'll do it off camera. I'm just gonna get this working real fast so we can actually update these stats. So we can say player database dot instance dot base stats dot add multiply base stat. Let's also add base stat. Base stats dot add to base stat, and then that will be effect dot stat to modify effect dot modifier value. Cool. If it's not an add, to do others, but that's fine for now. We need to do like multiplication, division, subtraction, and so on. And we need to do the like remove on this as well, that will call from the beginning of this, but I just want to get this to a point where I can put on some boots and then open my stats window and see that I have +5 movement. And I think this might do it. No, it won't. We need to actually call this from equipment as well. So let's look at how, actually, equipment does apply a consumable effect. Alright, so it might just work. So we have stats. All this has our defaults. That's totally fine, I guess. We can just show them, even though they're probably fine. There's some we want to exclude, like none, probably current health, camera projection, etc., etc. We probably want a whitelist, actually. But you can now see that we have all these, and they are mapped to the enum of possible stats that items can modify. So we have our move speed somewhere. Move speed 10. Cool, cool, cool. We can't actually move because of these errors, but if we go ahead and equip something with additional move speed, +5 move speed, we had 10, now we have 15. It works. Alright. This is now just a visualization of the store that we manage the player's stats in. So all these stats can be modified by items. We're going to add a lot more. We won't need to add them manually here. They'll just work because this is a visualization of that. Cool. I think there's a lot more to do. We didn't rig up spending attribute points. We didn't rig up having these apply these bonuses. We built the data structures for the bonuses so that we could loop over them and apply them this way. We didn't do that quite yet, but I think this is going to be fine. Let's go ahead and test out if we take these off, does it properly remove the subtraction? It does not, because we're only supporting add here, and the inverse is the subtraction, which is just how we rigged it up. But that is fine. We have a stats window. The stats don't do anything yet, but you can see those stats. I guess some of them do things, but a lot of them will start doing things when we add combat. Wow, that is a lot to say. My voice hurts so much. I've been streaming for about 4 hours now. I appreciate everyone who came in. Sarat, if you're still here, thanks for coming in. Sorry you caught me at the end. But I'm going to go drink a bunch of water, maybe have some tea, have some food, get some sunlight, and then I'll get back to some coding. But I think that's good for stream today. Thank you, everyone. As always, it's nice to have you here. And I will see you back on a regularly scheduled stream. The next one will be Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So see you then.